As I sat in my small college apartment, looking at my bank account, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. The numbers on the screen were low, barely enough for next month's groceries. I'm Julia Anderson, a junior at Columbia University. Until today, I thought I understood my family, but life has a way of surprising you in the worst ways. I remembered a Christmas morning when I was 12. My little sister, Catherine, had just turned 10. "Mom, Dad, look, Santa brought me a brand new iPad," she shouted with excitement. I sat quietly with my new sweater and books. When I looked at my mom, she gave me that same look, the one that said, "Be the mature one, Margaret. Catherine needs extra attention. You understand, don't you?" I had heard those words my whole life. Whenever Catherine needed more, I had to understand. Now, 15 years later, the same thing was happening, but in a much worse way. My parents had just told me they couldn't pay for the rest of my college. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about your tuition," my dad said. The timing wasn't random. They told me this right after Catherine finally finished high school, on her third try. That night, we sat around the dinner table, my mom's pot roast filling the air. Catherine was excited. "I applied to Yale, Harvard, and Princeton. Imagine if I get in," she said, practically bouncing in her chair. I almost choked. After failing high school twice, she thought she could get into Ivy League schools? My dad cleared his throat. "Margaret, this is what we needed to talk about." I put down my fork, already sensing bad news. With Catherine going to college, we had to rethink our finances. We can't afford to pay for your tuition anymore." I felt like I had been punched. I waited for him to say he was joking, but he wasn't. "What do you mean? I'm halfway through my degree. We know it's hard, but Catherine needs our full support now. You're older, more responsible. You can take a year off, work, and save up." I looked at Catherine. She wouldn't meet my eyes. My hands shook with anger. "So, you're paying for all of Catherine's college, but you're cutting me off? Your sister needs more help. You've always been independent," my dad said. There it was again, the same excuse. I pushed my chair back and stood up. "I need some air." The next day, I went to my job at the campus bookstore. As I stacked books, my mind raced with numbers. 3 years of working had taught me how to save, but I didn't have enough for 2 years of tuition. "Margaret, you've been staring at that book for 5 minutes," Rachel, my best friend and coworker, said. "Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to afford college." "I still can't believe your parents did that. Have you thought about student loans?" I nodded, showing her my notes. The debt would be huge, and I might not even get approved without a co-signer. "What about your grandparents, the ones in Connecticut? You said you're close with them." Rachel's words sparked a memory. Last Christmas, my grandfather mentioned investments for his grandkids. My parents had quickly changed the subject. "Rachel, you're a genius. I need to make a call." "Wait, what did I say?" I didn't answer. I rushed to the break room and grabbed my phone. My hands shook as I dialed. After 3 rings, my grandmother's warm voice answered. "Margaret, sweetheart, what a lovely surprise." "Hi, Gran. Is Grandpa there too? I need to ask something important." "Of course, dear, let me put you on speaker." I heard rustling, then my grandfather's deep voice. "There's our future journalist. How's college?" My throat tightened. I took a deep breath. "That's why I'm calling. Mom and Dad said they can't pay for my last 2 years. They want me to take a year off." Silence. When my grandfather finally spoke, his voice was cold. "What do you mean they can't afford it? What happened to your college fund?" My what?" "The college fund we set up for you when you were born, dear. We gave it to your parents when you turned 18. I gripped the phone tighter. The break room suddenly felt too small. "I never knew about any college fund. How much was in it?" "Enough to pay for your entire college education, Margaret. We set up one for you and one for Catherine." My heart pounded. All this time, there had been money for my education, and my parents never told me. My grandfather's voice grew serious. I had rarely heard him sound this way. "Stay where you are, Margaret. Your grandmother and I will drive up tomorrow morning. We need to get to the bottom of this." "No, please, let me handle it first. I need to find out where that money went." "Are you sure, dear? This is serious." The shock faded, replaced by determination. I glanced at the clock. My shift would be over in 20 minutes. "Yes, I'm sure, but I might need your help later. Could you send me any documents about the college fund?" After ending the call, I walked back to the front of the bookstore. Rachel took one look at me and frowned. "You look like you've seen a ghost. What happened?" "I need a favor. Can you cover the rest of my shift? I have to go home right now." "Of course, but text me later, okay? You're scaring me." The drive home felt endless. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I saw Catherine's brand new blue BMW, the graduation gift from our parents. Now, I had a terrible feeling about where that money had really gone. Inside, my mom was in the kitchen, humming while she cooked. She smiled when she saw me. "You're home early, I'm making your favorite, lasagna. Mom, we need to talk about the college fund Grandpa and Gran set up for me." The spatula slipped from her hand and hit the floor. Who told you about that?" She bent down, her hands shaking as she picked it up. "Does it matter? What happened to my college fund, Mom?" The only sound in the kitchen was the bubbling of the sauce on the stove. "Your father and we had to make some difficult choices over the years. For the family?" I asked, my voice calm. My mother hesitated. "For Catherine." Inside, I was shaking. Everything from the past suddenly felt different, like puzzle pieces fitting into place. "Your sister needed extra help, private tutors, special classes, her car to get to study sessions. So you used my college fund? The money Grandpa and Gran saved just for my education? We always planned to replace it, but then there were family vacations, and Catherine's third attempt at high school wasn't cheap." Now I understood. Every luxury, every important expense for Catherine, every trip, it had all been paid for with my future. "Does Catherine know? Does she know her car was bought with my college money?" "Please, Margaret, you can't tell her, it would break her heart." I let out a bitter laugh. The irony was almost too much. "What about my heart, Mom? What about my future?" Just then, I heard the front door open. My father's footsteps echoed in the hallway. "Something smells good, is that lasagna?" He walked in, smiling, until he saw my mother's pale face and my rigid posture. "Dad, perfect timing. We were just talking about my college fund, the one Grandpa and Gran set up for me." "Sophia, who told her?" "She called them, Austin, they told her everything." My dad's face shifted from shock to defense. "No, Margaret, you have to understand, as parents, we had to make decisions for the whole family. Like spending my college money on Catherine's car, on vacations? Your sister needed that car for school, and those trips were important for family bonding." I pulled out my phone and showed them the email from my grandfather, proof of the original college fund. "This says there was enough money for all of my college. Where did it go?" "Sweetheart, please try to understand." A car door slammed outside. Catherine was home. "Hey everyone, you won't believe what happened in my college prep class today." She walked into the kitchen, twirling her BMW keys, but stopped when she saw our faces. "What's wrong? Why does everyone look so serious?" I turned to my parents, waiting for them to explain. When they stayed silent, I spoke instead. "That car? It was bought with my college fund, the money Grandpa and Gran saved for me." "What? No, Mom and Dad bought it for me as a graduation gift." "Catherine, honey, it's complicated." "Is it? Tell her about the college funds Grandpa and Gran set up for both of us. Tell her how you spent mine but kept hers safe." Catherine's face turned pale as she looked down at her car keys. "Is this true? You spent Margaret's college money on me?" "We just wanted to help you, Catherine. You needed extra support." "By stealing from my sister?" Her voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw real horror on her face. "I don't want the car, not if it was bought with Margaret's future." She set her keys on the kitchen counter, her hands shaking. "Don't be dramatic, Catherine. What's done is done." "Dramatic? You stole from my sister so I could have things I didn't even earn." For the first time, my sister saw the truth. "All those tutors, those expensive schools, you weren't just helping me, you were making Julia pay for my failures. We did what we thought was best for you." "Best for me? Look at what you've done. I barely made it through high school, and Julia might have to drop out of college." She turned to me, her eyes filled with regret. "Margaret, I'm so sorry, I had no idea." "I know you didn't." The next morning, the doorbell rang early. I opened the door to see my grandparents, their faces grim. "Where are your parents, dear?" "In the kitchen, Catherine's with them." My grandfather nodded, his usual warmth replaced by determination, and walked toward the kitchen. "Austin, Sophia, we need to talk about what you've done with Margaret's college fund." "Dad, please, we can explain." "Explain what?" "How you misused money meant for your daughter's education." "Grandpa, it's my fault too. I should have worked harder and not let them spend so much on my failures." "No, Catherine, the responsibility lies with your parents. They were trusted with this money." My grandfather pulled out a thick folder of documents. "I have the original trust documents, bank statements, and records of withdrawals. Would you like to explain these expenses?" "Those withdrawals were necessary for the family." "Family needs? Like Caribbean cruises? A luxury car? That's not what this money was for, and you know it." My grandfather's voice was controlled but filled with disappointment. "Do you remember when I gave you this house, Austin? Of course, it was your wedding gift to us." I gave it to you so you could focus on raising your family, not so you could betray one child's future for another's luxuries. A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. Even my mother stopped fidgeting nervously. I've made a decision. I'm transferring the deed of this house to Margaret. What? You can't do that. I can, and I will. The house is still in my name, and I'm giving it to someone who understands responsibility. Grandpa's right. Julia deserves this after everything that's happened. Please, there must be another way. We can sell things, take out loans. For the first time, I saw real fear in my father's eyes. The tables had completely turned. You have two choices. You can either move out within a month, or you can start paying rent to Margaret, rent that will go toward her college expenses. Pay rent to our own daughter? In our own home? It's not your home anymore, just like that college fund wasn't your money to spend. I'll sell my car, at least that can help pay for some of Margaret's tuition. I looked at Catherine, surprised by her offer. It's the right thing to do. I don't deserve things bought with your future. Something shifted in me at that moment. Despite everything, I saw real remorse in my sister's eyes. Keep the car, Catherine, but promise me you'll work hard in college, really work this time. Tears filled my sister's eyes as she nodded. A month has passed since that conversation in the kitchen. The house deed is now in my name, and my parents are paying rent that goes directly to my college tuition. The family dynamic has completely changed. My father took on extra work, trying to make things right. I know it doesn't make up for what we did, but I want to try to fix this. My mother has started counseling, finally facing the way she'd always enabled Catherine at my expense. I got accepted to the local state university. It's not an Ivy League school, but it's where I should have aimed for in the first place. I smiled at my sister's newfound self-awareness. She had already started her first part-time job, determined to pay for her own expenses. The biggest change has been in my relationship with Catherine. Without our parents' favoritism, we've started to become real sisters. Maybe the greatest lesson in all of this is that sometimes, it takes a big upheaval to rebuild something stronger.